The Cerebral Entertainment Podcast.
We are recording video now.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
We are recording.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to yet another riveting edition of the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast. I am James, and with me, as always, is my good friend Colt.
Yes, sir.
And with us today, we have special returning guest. I think we counted 4 or 5 times, something like that. We lost count. Mr. Bryant Wolfin. Bryant, how you doing, sir?
Hey, guys. I am doing fantastic. Thanks for having me back.
Great to have you back. Welcome to the podcast studio of Colts.
Oh, it's major upgrade since last time.
Right? It's pretty sweet, right?
Yeah, it's
What
awesome.
was wrong with my bedroom?
The closet was fantastic.
Yeah. He's moving up, and it's looking great. So thanks for coming out, man, to talk to us. We got a couple different topics we want to discuss with you today. We tend to go down a lot of the political landscape type of conversation when we have you here, and that's because you are a political guy. You're into politics, not just like as a hobby or anything. You actually ran for, what was it, state rep in the state of Missouri?
Yep, I ran for state representative in my district, which was District 116.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that. How did that go, man? What was not just everybody runs for state rep, right?
Right.
So just about anything you tell me is going to be news to me about what
Okay.
that's even like. So just whatever you think is interesting or even the mundane, just to kind of give us some insight into what that's like to try to become one of the state representatives.
Well, first of all, I learned why there's not a lot of people that do run, because it is a crap ton of work, man. And you know, unfortunately, it didn't go my way, as people could probably go where the tone of this is going. We didn't win. You know, like I said, I ran against Representative Dale Wright. And in the last podcast I was here, I kind of stated my reasons why. I won't get back into that for time purposes. And so basically, I ran a race that was based on grassroots and working my freaking tail end off. And, you know, I knocked personally about 2,200 doors. You know, COVID really hurt that as well. It could have been more. Or at the same time, I guess it could have been less because there was less time spent at doors because of, you know, people not wanting to be as close. And, you know, it was more just dropping off rather than, you know, talking to constituents. But we had still 2,200 doors. And, you know, I had some endorsements that helped out there as well that actually exceeded 14,000 doors total knocked for me, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. You know, the biggest takeaway, you know, we learned a lot. It's a lot of work. Basically, I was working at our businesses. If anybody remembers, I own 2 convenience stores, so I work usually 6 days a week. That went down to about 3 days a week, and I was out knocking doors pretty much anywhere from 5 to 6 days a week, if not on nice weeks, 7 days. You know, my wife and I both, on some occasions, if one we did have a new baby girl over the campaign time span, so she did put she has as beautiful and wonderful she was, it was a minor inconvenience when it came to the campaign, anyways. You know, but obviously she's well worth it. She's the best baby in the world. Anyways, getting back into it. So we door knocked, we wrote letters, we tried to change things because of COVID. I had a plan before COVID, and we had to drastically change those. So, you know, we did letters, we knocked doors, events, tons of events were getting canceled. So your normal Lincoln days and Coolidge days that normal Republican events would have, because I ran on the Republican ticket in the primary, you know, were all canceled. So, you know, trying to get your name out there for a first-time candidate was extremely difficult, and so we had to switch it up and go grassroots and just knock a bunch of doors. You know, we had a lot of regrets. There was a lot of politics played, even though both campaigns played it really clean. You know, I really just learned how politics works on the campaign side of things. Obviously, as a hobby, it's all nice to talk about, and you know, you could spread your opinion all you want, but when you start getting into the nitty gritty and trying to make changes at the legislator level, it's a whole new ball game, and I'd love to get into that.
Well, at the state level in the state of Missouri, what kind of changes could you affect as a state representative? I mean, what issues in the state could you go there as a representative and, join a committee and vote toward and all of, what kind of issues specifically?
Well, I was going in there to make Missouri a more liberty-minded state. In Missouri, it's a fairly conservative state, but I think, as we discussed last time, I lean quite a bit more libertarian than most Republicans. So I think Republicans have a tendency of, once they get to preach conservative founding principles, even some libertarianism, but once they get into office, they forget those and they start implementing bigger government in smaller ways. And so my plan was to get in there and hopefully nullify some federal laws, to get in there. And at this point, I was jokingly saying, if I'd have been in there, we might be, I might have introduced a secession bill to try to secede from the Union, but that was kind of a joke, but maybe serious at the same time. But anyway, so, some of the main things, gun laws, which there is a CEP legislation that's out there. It's been in there. That's something that my opponent didn't sponsor, and that was one thing that I would have sponsored and would have pushed. And basically that nullifies any federal Second Amendment laws that Missouri deems as unconstitutional. And there are many of those, in my opinion. So that was one thing that I would have tried to do. And like I said, taxes is huge for me. Any percentage of tax on any level of government, to me, is essentially an attack on a person's personal property. You earn an income that is your income, and when the government takes it by gunpoint, because if you don't pay them, guess what? You're going to be held up by gunpoint eventually.
They're coming to get you.
They're coming to get you. So that was one of my big things, was taxes. Working on the budget and trying to get money allocated to places to where we could really reduce the tax base for Missouri, so we could lessen the tax burden on American citizens or Missouri citizens, excuse me. And so that was kind of the main issues that I was tackling.
So you mentioned income taxes. Do you feel like any taxes are fair? Like, the ones I probably have the most problem with are personal property taxes.
Definitely.
Because
I pushed that, and that was actually a funny story. Is one of the biggest things that I argued with Republicans on the campaign trail was the personal property tax. I think it should be abolished. I think it's an abomination that it's even, especially in a conservative state like Missouri, that it's a thing.
Right.
And I think it's a key. You hear the saying, when a government implements a program, it doesn't go away. Personal property tax is the perfect thing. It's been implemented, and even getting Republicans or conservatives on that mind frame that it is not only not necessary, but it is just downright unjustified, that you just can't get it into their brains.
So do you have any...
Income tax, the same way too, by the way. Abolish income tax.
Yeah?
Yep.
Are there any taxes that are fair?
I would be okay with consumption taxes.
Yeah.
Back in the day, back before 1913, before there was an federal income tax, it was mainly excise taxes. And I'd be fine with consumption to sales taxes. Honestly, I understand government is so big right now, you would have to raise sales tax to an extreme. But you know what? If you're saving on income tax and you're not being taxed on your property, and your personal property that you supposedly own, but yet you still have to give the government money for it, then that's a sacrifice I'm willing to take, an increase in consumption tax, if we can get, knock those other two away.
So the idea, to my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong if you know, but the idea behind personal property tax in the first place was because, and this is I don't know, socialistic kind of philosophy if you ask me, but if you were a landowner, right? So if you owned this chunk of land, and this land wasn't being used to, perpetuate society in some way, shape, or form, you just owned it because you were like a land, owner, a baron, of some kind. You just had this massive amounts of land that you just want to sit on. The government would tax that because it wasn't being used for something productive in order to, benefit society.
I believe that's where it started.
But how did that end up becoming the same thing for my truck that I bought in 2007, and I'm still paying personal property taxes on it each and every year? That doesn't make sense, right?
And once the government gets their inch, they start taking that mile and by definition. So if you start having definitions of saying, oh, well, your land is personal property, it's not being used, so we need extra taxes to get it taxed. to get our extra tax base for whatever we need to spend for roads or whatever. Well, next thing you know, actually it looks like your truck is in the same category as your land, and and kind of like that situation.
We've been eyeing that boat you got over there.
Yeah,
let's go ahead and throw a tax on that bad boy.
Yep.
We need to stripe 8 highway.
Funny story, real quick. This doesn't necessarily pertain to anything, but it's just a funny about personal property. So when I first I bought one of my first dirt bikes when I first started to get back into motocross, and as an adult, I bought my first dirt bike that I bought. My wife turned that into the assessor's office, and because we did have the title and everything for it. Next thing I know, when I get my tax bill the next year, it's showing a CRF 250. I'm like, Megan, what the heck is this? I didn't turn that in. Nobody turns their dirt bikes in for personal property tax. And so then I was getting taxed on my dirt bike until I freaking sold it. So So hopefully I didn't shout myself out there for other dirt bikes that I've owned, but it's but sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a rail there. But that when it comes to personal property tax, it's just an unjustified tax for me, and that was one of the biggest things for me is taxes, and that's even why I ran for alderman. If you guys remember, I was an alderman before I ran for state rep. It was because I thought the taxes in St. Genevieve were becoming excessive. They were before, but that I wanted to make a difference about it.
Yeah. How much of a process is that, though? If you would have got any position that you were to get, what kind of a process is it to actually change that?
Pain in the butt. It's a big process. So trying to get government spending under control on any level is impossible. As long as they're not losing too much money, the governments are fine with it, and the people are fine with it. It should start with the people. The people need to start waking up and realizing, look, it's not okay that the government's taking your money. We just have to realize that because if the people aren't going to say you can't have my money, then the government's just going to keep taking it. And obviously we legally have to give it to them. Otherwise you will be in prison eventually, or they will come for your personal assets, one of the two. But until the people start going to their elected officials and doing it, I guess doing the diplomatic way and going through the right avenues of complaining and voting in the right people who are against taxes, it's just not going to change. And I've seen that in St. Genevieve. I made some cuts to the budget, and it was very hard. So the cuts that I proposed got cut by more than half, and it was not even like 1% of the budget. It was like 0.2% of the budget were the cuts that I put in there, and that got cut in more than half. And because people just aren't willing to give up the spending on the government level because of either they feel bad for the employees because there'd have to be cuts, or there's I wouldn't say justified, but there's good reasons of why they're against cutting the spending. However, what they don't realize is in the end it could be unnecessary, and it's just taking away from the taxpayers' personal property.
Don't you think that the reason why it's so hard to cut taxes in the first place, at least for the most part, is because they have that money already spent? It's like it's already earmarked for something years down the road.
Yep.
Like, especially if you get to the federal level, you're talking about 10 years down the road. They've already got this budget planned out. They've already got the money spent.
Yep.
It's like, no, you can't. It's already gone.
Yep.
So where are you going to cut it from?
It's not so bad on the locale level, like municipality wise. I would say, usually we're pretty year to year. Now you have plans planned out, like with our water department, for instance, about replacing things. So yeah, essentially they have the plan, and if that tax base gets reduced, then they're going to have to make some drastic changes. But the problem is they still have usually unnecessary spending in other areas, and some of those high priority departments, maybe they need that money, and that's fine, but that doesn't mean spending money on advertisement is necessary for a city. That's a hard no for me. No city should be advertising to get people to come to town. Regardless, yeah, it may bring more people in and they spend more money there, but it's just the principle behind you're literally spending other people's money to bring people into town to increase more taxes, and that just doesn't sit well to me.
Yeah. Well, the people that are benefiting from that is the business owners who are probably already friends with the government officials, because kind of, it's a network type of situation. So, I mean, I get it. I get you want people to come to your town and spend money, especially if you've got a little bit of an attraction type of town or a city.
Branson's a big,
Branson.
like that,
you want people to come to Branson, St. Louis, Springfield. But I saw an advertisement the other day for Columbia, Missouri, and I'm thinking, why? I like Columbia just fine. You got the Blue Note there, of course. Mizzou is there, but it's not really someplace where you go just to have a night out, unless you're going to the Blue Note to see a show or something like that.
Well,
So I found that weird.
It's kind of like even local towns around here where they just throw the word historic in front of it or something, and it's like, what? Huh? Why? People don't need to come. Why do they want to come here?
Historic Farmington downtown. Like St. Genevieve does have some taglines to hold on to because it is the oldest settlement on this side of the Mississippi. However, let's use that as an advertisement. Well, they do, but we don't need the city. Let's use the businesses to advertise for the city. We don't need the city spending taxpayer dollars for the advertising. And that was always one of my arguments. And then someone had argued back basically like, well, we use grant money for the advertisement. And I'm like, okay, well, that's still taxpayer money. So yeah, it may not be the city's taxpayer money, but it's coming from a tax base of some form or fashion. So, and that just doesn't sit well with me. And like that's was the kind of stuff that I wanted to do at the state level. And we just unfortunately weren't able to make it happen. The thing about local politics is very hard to persuade someone who's very well known, or to persuade people away from someone that they deem a friend or is very well known. And so like in St. Genevieve, where I'm from, I won the county. He did better than I thought he'd do in St. John County. Of course, there are some more bigger government individuals in the county. We'll just say that that would support his type of policies. And then, St. Perryville, where we essentially tied, and I worked my butt end off over there, he had other politically tied people that were pushing him, so establishment type that were pushing him. So they were able to get quite a bit of support there, and we ended up, my hard work kind of tied off from his negligence almost to the county, but he had people working for him. I call it the Hawley effect. Josh Hawley, obviously, who ran for senator in 2018, in the primary campaigned hardly at all, but he had all the state legislators and all the establishment people campaigning for him, so he smoked everybody. So that's what happened to me in Perryville. And then St. Francis County, where Mr. Wright's from, I knew I was going to lose from the get-go of that county. It was just trying to do damage control over there, and I just think I didn't work hard enough in St. Francis County, which was on me for sure.
Okay.
What else could you have done?
Well, I think we could have focused a little bit harder in St. Francis County. That's one thing we could have done. One thing that I was told I did wrong was I was too clean. I could have been more negative, but that's just, if you guys both know me, that's just not me.
Right.
And that was how if we were going after like a national politician or something, maybe I could get dirty, especially, but
sling some mud.
Yeah, sling some mud. But I know Dale. I'm not going to do that. It's he's never done anything but been nice to me. So the whole goal was to get in there and run a clean race, and we did that. And he did that as well. He didn't, there were some jabs here and there by both of us. We had a debate, that we did on the internet. Well, I was on TV too, but it was on like a Froggy 96 in Farmington debate Dawkins broadcast. And oops, sorry guys, pulled a Colt there.
Thanks, man.
Anyways, we did a debate, threw some jabs here and there, and we did a little bit in speeches here and there, but no, nothing bad.
Did you see any of the underbelly of politics otherwise, though? Was there anything that you might not be able to share specifics, but can you give us some general ideas about?
Oh, we'll get some specifics. That's for
okay,
sure.
Let's hear it then. What did you see when you were campaigning for state rep?
When they say it's hard for an incumbent or for a non-incumbent to beat an incumbent, it's not because the candidate usually. There's a lot of times that you do have bad non-viable candidates running against incumbents. That happens more often than not, probably 90% of the time. But when you get a viable candidate to run against an incumbent, like I believe I was, and actually I know I was, obviously, because we almost pulled it off, there are political ties that seem to get in the way. So when it comes to funding, politics, regardless of what people think, it's all about funding. And so I was able, the state rep level, you usually need to raise anywhere from like 25 to 50 grand. We were able to raise, COVID obviously happened this year. We were able to get about $21,000 of grassroots money. That's no PAC money whatsoever, no political action committee money whatsoever. That is specific money coming from people like us, people that were struggling through COVID, family members, friends, my own money in there. A couple fundraisers we did here and there, selling shirts and stuff. 21 grand is what we raised. My opponent in the last month alone, in PAC money, had 17,000. So, to put it in perspective, there, it's hard to compete with that.
Can you explain PAC money real quick?
So basically, you have these political action committees that have there's different. You have your Missouri's Renter Association. There's just so many. I can't think of any specific names off the top of my head because it's been a minute since I've looked at any reports. But they're basically type of lobbyists, kind of firms, if you will, that are trying to get things done. They're the ones that you see campaigning for different people, and basically they fundraise and they get money from people for specific issues, whether it's big government or the small government. There's good and bad. It's along the entire political spectrum. There's PACs. Education's a big one that always brings, and unions always bring in a ton of money, and all that swung the other way and not in my favor, basically. But though they will give money to candidates that they know will push their agenda, basically.
Right. Gotcha.
So something like, the unions are always really heavily backing Democratic candidates.
Yep.
And that's because the issues that are going to be brought to the table for policymaking are going to support the same, they're going to support the unions, basically. And a lot of those could be, just anything from taxation to, labor laws, whatever the case may be, right? So this money is pushed to this candidate in order for that candidate to go to the state capital or to the federal capital and vote accordingly, right?
Yep. If they do not, they won't support that candidate.
Right.
And the money wasn't even it, so that's not even the only thing. So we'll take some. When it comes to the Republican Party, you got pro-life and you got guns, right? So you have the Missouri Right to Life Association, and then you have the NRA, two of the bigger, Republican bastion, areas. Mm-hmm. So my opponent, which is one thing that we disagreed on when it came to the pro-life thing. I was 100% pro-life. They passed the heartbeat bill back in 2018, which my opponent did vote for, but he publicly came out and stated that he wasn't necessarily pleased for voting for it. He pretty much... He claims he wanted to make it better, and when he says make it better, think, regardless of your politics, we're talking from a pro-life standpoint here. Mm-hmm. His way of making it better was getting rid of certain mandates that are in it. So basically allowing exceptions for abortion. Well, someone who's 100% pro-life, that's not making it better. That's the total opposite of making it better. Mm-hmm. It's against what the bill is supposed to be doing, but yet he voted for it anyways because he knew if he didn't vote for it, guess what? I probably would have won this election, so he had to vote for it. So even though he disagreed with it. So that was one thing. Publicly stated that, all in newspapers, on the radio, even at the Missouri Right to Life banquet that was said. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? It's like, there's people looking around in the crowd that's like, did he really just say that? Mm-hmm. But yet, guess who got that Missouri Right to Life endorsement? He did.
Well, do you suppose he's parsing his message because he's catering to so many different people? I mean, yeah, he's got that. I guess that's a PAC money coming into him from the Right to Life organization.
No, I think that's what he actually beliees. I know. Actually, I believe that's what he believes. But that's against what the Missouri Right to Life is for.
I got you.
But the thing is, when it comes to Republicans, Missouri Right to Life is probably your number one endorsement you want. And yeah, I had a good survey. They didn't say I was a bad candidate. That when they put out their newsletter and all that stuff, they said that I had a good survey, but since he voted for the one bill that they had pushed, mm-hmm. he voted yes on it, even though he had negative comments against it. They still gave him the okay there. So that's one thing, and then we'll go into the NRA. So Dale is actually fairly solid on guns. I'll give him that. He hasn't done anything bad against it. There hasn't really been any gun legislation, though, that he could have voted against. Mm-hmm. But he has had some comments out there. One of my big things was trying, even if we couldn't get SAPA done, which is the gun nullification I was talking about, I wanted to get the fee waived for silencers or suppressors. Something that we could do here and nullify that fee in Missouri, and that was one thing that we disagreed on. And then we discussed, actually at the last one, if like background checks and stuff worked. He's in support of background checks and stuff like that as well. So, I'm on the more radical side of the Second Amendment, whereas he's more moderate. But, that's fine. He's great. Not as good as me, but he's not bad. He's not a Democrat is what I'm getting at when it comes to the Second Amendment. So we disagreed there. I obviously aligned more with the NRA's point of views. But, with that being said, a lot of people argue that the NRA's reaching further across the aisle, such as wanting to ban bump stocks and stuff like that, which I would also be hardcore against. But either way, once again, same thing. I would align more with their original views not necessarily what they've started swaying towards, but their original views. But he got the endorsement anyways because he didn't technically do anything wrong, and they don't want to piss off an incumbent, basically.
Sure.
What about taking that up to the bigger level? Aren't they talking about like taxing you for every gun that you own or that's registered to you now?
I think there has been some Democratic candidates on the presidential trail that were talking about that. They want to do, persuade anybody from buying guns, basically. What they're actually going to do is just get people to buy guns illegally. That's all that's going to do. Yep. So, they can either make the problem worse or they can make the problem better by making it easier for people to access guns and, go from there. So, I'm usually against a registration type of thing when it comes to guns because I don't necessarily want the government knowing what all guns I have. But, I guess if I have to put up with a registration so I don't have to deal with a bunch of taxes, which would already have registration anyways, I guess I could live with that, but that's not necessarily ideal for me.
I'd have to say that your viewpoints on guns is still pretty radical compared to most of anybody that I talk to.
Yep. Just
in general. When you start breaking out silencers and suppressors and things like that, a lot of people are going to ask why. Why do you need those things unless you're a hitman on a movie and you're sneaking in at night and you're.
See, that's exactly the problem. I would say most of those people that question that don't even know what a silencer does. Mm-hmm. A silencer is not like what you see in James Bond. They're loud. It's still loud, but you could probably get away with shooting without headphones at that point or earbuds. So, if I go into a school with a silencer, just to bring up an extreme scenario, the classroom next door or everybody in that school is still going to know I'm there.
I got you.
So suppressors to me, they're being badly portrayed for stuff that because of movies, when in reality they're just not that way. They're usually used for sport and for people to be able to whether it's for an extension on the barrel for a little bit of accuracy help, or whether it's for which is its main thing is so people don't have to wear earbuds. And I know someone personally who has had a loss of hearing and for shooting when he was younger and stuff like that, and he has a problem with like wearing certain earbuds and stuff like that, and so it would help him out a little bit.
That's a good point. Do they also help like if you're out deer hunting? Do they have suppressors for deer rifles that kind of quell the noise so it doesn't go from valley to valley and scare off all the other animals?
So I'm not necessarily a hunter, so I couldn't technically answer that, but I don't see why it wouldn't hurt. It would obviously.
If they don't, they should.
Exactly.
That should be a thing.
It would mitigate from scaring off other animals or other deer, of course. That would allow you to maybe miss a shot, but yet still have a shot at another deer.
Right. But in all fairness, now I do remember last episode, Bryant, you did say that you were in favor of citizens owning cannons and gunships as well.
Yeah, that's
pretty radical.
It's pretty crazy. I understand that, but to me, for even really conservatives and Republicans in general that argue that the Second Amendment was put there for us to be able to defend ourselves against tyranny. Mm-hmm. Well, how the hell are we supposed to defend ourselves with AR-15s against a freaking tank?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I got an AR-15. What's my single shot AR that's good for about 200 yards gonna do against a Navy SEAL that? And obviously we're talking extreme crap here, mm-hmm. but I'm just talking extreme scenarios and the reasoning behind the Second Amendment of what conservatives portray it to be, and at the same time, yet they still implement legislation that will give the people a disadvantage against any tyranny that might actually happen.
Right.
So that's just my mentality behind it. I'm just trying to stay principally consistent. And I think, we need to, us more radicals need to fight even the Republicans to bring it back further to where, the original Second Amendment was at, because, or where the originalists think it should be, because the more that we give, it's just going to continue to get those regulations are going to continue to grow. So we need to start fighting back instead of playing defense. It's time to go on the offense and peel it back.
Yeah.
Did going through the state rep race change any of your mindset or change any of your beliefs in any certain areas or anything like that?
That's hard to say, honestly. I would say it might have made me a little bit more radical in some sense, because I guess that it opened my eyes in some areas that governments, I just didn't even think about. I might have, one thing I was beforehand was I was all about locales. Leave it to the localities. But then I got into some discussions with some more libertarian people that were actually pro state level over locales, in the sense of, because I was arguing against, I didn't want extra legislation coming down that was inherently creating more regulations for municipalities. So, we got into the conversation, are like, well, let's look at this. Your municipalities have some of the highest tax bases as far as tax percentage wise. They just keep voting in. It's easier to get a smaller amount of people to vote yes on a tax, basically. So what they have to do at the state level is basically have a legislation that says, look, municipalities can't go above this tax. So we'll take personal property, for instance. They cannot be above 1% of, the $100 or whatever it is. They have a cap on how much they can tax. I was against that at first, and then I got to thinking, I'm like, well, that's a good point, because when you get some of these people on the municipality levels that just don't know what they're doing, they'll just tax to get the money. If they can't figure out ways to figure it out, they'll just go ahead and just add an additional tax. I've seen that firsthand in St. John. That actually is something that I changed my mind on. Because I used to say, let's get state out of locale altogether. Let's not mix the two. Locales do your thing, state do your thing. And then that kind of changed my mind a little bit, that there is necessity on state regulations over locales to keep them in check, so they aren't overbearing on people's rights.
There's probably a lot of areas where not enough work is put in to find that money somewhere else before taxing too, right?
Yeah, I would say that's safe. I mean, basically, when they allocate money there, rather than trying to figure out other places to do it, they don't have quite the same amount of resources as the state would, or larger counties. They'll just go ahead and just add to the tax. And people have to vote it in, and they just continuously do. But the thing is, when it comes to elections, is it's a lot easier to persuade a smaller amount of people to vote yes. You can make people feel bad. Oh, well, this park is for the children, so we need to get this done. And so people vote for it.
Well, it's especially true if it's the children where they play. Like if it's their children that play in this park, then it's probably easier to persuade them to throw into that bucket, right? To improve such things. Which,
that happened very much, once again, in our county with our community center, stuff like that. People with the water park and everything, regardless of if the water park is successful or not in the end, that doesn't even matter to me. The whole point of it is you're going to raise our taxes so our children have a place to play. Right. And to me, that's not a justified reason to take people's money.
It's not a priority, right? No. Although it is a very nice water park.
Oh, it's awesome.
Have you been there?
I have not.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
It's very nice.
I'll give them that. And, it hasn't hit its expectations yet because of COVID.
Right, yeah.
And it got a late start last year, or the year that it was built. However, I'm pretty confident they'll be able to meet those numbers, but it's just not the point. The point is, in the community center in general in St. Genevieve, although I love the people that run it, by the way, there's some of my friends that run it, and that doesn't mean we agree politically on this. It's just not a justified reason to take people's money.
Yeah, because not everybody is going to use that water park, right?
Nope.
I mean, is there not a way where if you're going to use the water park, you throw into the pot and build it from there? I doubt it, but I mean, you're going to pay you pay a fee to get into it anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, even if you're a resident in St. John County, you're paying an annual fee.
Right.
The fee, by the way, you could live outside of St. John County, but a membership is going to be the same for someone who lives inside St. John County.
Oh, really? They don't have different membership prices for county? Oh, wow.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
I mean, even St. Francis County did better than that, right?
Yep.
So
that that was always kind of funny to me, and I understand there's probably not a whole lot of people coming from outside of St. John County to it, but there might be someone, especially with the water park. The water park, there definitely might be, because it's right now it's definitely better than Farmington's. So
yeah,
it's there might be people coming from Farmington that want that annual membership. And they'll benefit it just as much from someone who lives in St. John. So
who paid the taxes to have it built?
Exactly right.
Nice.
And,
okay.
Yeah.
So you talk a lot about radical. There's a lot of things that are going on at the federal level that are considered pretty radical right now, including, I guess, what we're calling the Washington D.C. riots, where people actually infiltrated the Capitol building. And there are some that stick out in particular, like the guy who was wearing he was all in makeup. And he looked like a barbarian of some type. You've seen this guy?
Yeah. Bugga, whatever.
Yeah. Went in. I believe he was the one that was sitting at Nancy Pelosi's desk.
No, he was at the dais.
That's right. There was another guy who has apparently since been arrested who was at Nancy Pelosi's desk.
He's from Florida, right?
Is it? I don't remember.
They're all... remember what his name is, though.
I don't recall that myself.
But a lot. I don't have a lot of information on this. Like I was talking about with Colt, I believe last week. I have not been like really clued into what's going on in politics and in the just in the national news like I had been for so long. I just kind of had to eject for a while, and I've since not re-injected myself back into everything. Sure. So I see snippets. It's like, and most of what I get, like we spoke of, is due to social media. I'm not getting my news from there, but I'm seeing memes or I'm seeing little snippets about someone's opinion about, whether it's Mitch McConnell or talking about the rioters going into the Capitol, whatever. And so I'll go over and I'll find a news source and I'll look at it, and that's where I get the actual news from. But social media is really the only thing that's cluing me in right now. So I don't have a whole lot of information on this. So hopefully you can kind of guide us along. But there's a lot to talk about still, though, even just the idea of it, because we've been experiencing in this country a lot of riots for the past at least year. It's probably been more than that, hasn't it? Probably past several years, and since
2016, essentially.
Okay,
yeah.
But most of those, a great majority of those, have been on the other side of the aisle. It's been more of your liberal, BLM, Antifa type of groups that have perpetuated the riots and have been taking all of the media from it too. So now we have this on the other side. We have this, I guess they're right-wing Trump supporters is what I'm gathering, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, going to the Capitol and marching in protest, and then at some point in time, I don't know how it was triggered, but they decided they were going to go into the Capitol building, and the Capitol went on lockdown. And you had old dude sitting with his feet up on the desk, Nancy Pelosi's desk, which I thought was pretty hilarious.
Look, I want to stop you just real quick, and you're going to hear me, condemn what they did here in just a minute. But I'm not going to lie, that is one of the most badass pictures I've ever seen. But anyways, continue on.
Well, and that's kind of what I was getting at. There was a lot of, there was photo ops, for this all to happen. One of the things, and I'm just kind of giving you my overall just broad brushstroke of all of this, because I'm seeing a lot from both, the both sides of things, and I'm seeing a lot of condemnation from the right on this as well. They're like, hey, you shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. Whereas on the left, people are saying, if that would have been us, we'd have gotten shot. Which that may or may not be true for some groups. I don't know. There was also another picture on social media where I guess it was last year when it showed Washington D.C. burning. Basically, it was on fire. I'd forgotten that happened. Yep. Isn't that something? I'd forgotten that the Capitol was on fire.
Same.
Well, there was a lot of stuff that's happened since then.
I know, right?
It's just funny how quickly you do forget something
absolutely.
that substantial.
Yeah, that was big. It was huge. But that was happening. So there's just all this unrest that's been going on. At the end of it all, this seemed like it ended up being pretty mild at the end because, Congress got back into session and finished,
in their chambers.
Right, and finished their business with the Joe Biden What were they doing? They were bringing him into office. I forget the title.
They were certifying the electors.
Okay, there you go. There you go. So that was happening. And so not much it went on. Not to minimize the loss of life, there was at least one person.
Two now.
Was it two?
So you have a lady who was a Trump supporter that was shot.
Okay.
That was the 14-year vet that you probably, Ashley Babbitt or something like that. And then there was an officer, a Capitol Police officer, that had died from his injuries.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely don't want to minimize that.
No.
Because those, any loss of life is a terrible thing. But when it first started going down, I thought, man, this is getting pretty heavy. I thought maybe they were actually going to go in and topple the White House or something next, or take shit over, and it just didn't turn out that way, which is good. But still a lot of condemnation coming, of course, from both sides, especially from the left, but even the right saying, that wasn't okay. This isn't, and I'm glad because they weren't going for a tit for tat. Well, but some people do. Some people on social media are saying, well, you all have rioted, how many times, yada, yada. So I think we've got this one coming. You got to take a stand somewhere. So,
well, I think there were some differences between the two riots, and I think we can get into that here in a little bit. I just want to kind of preface the situation. The reason why we bring this up is because I actually went.
Yes,
I went to D.C. and I am not the biggest Trump supporter. I think he's been a pretty good president. Especially in foreign policy. I never in a million years imagined myself agreeing with the way Trump's handled on foreign policy, bringing troops home. A more non-interventionist type of policy is the way he is handled, or the way he's went, and that's my kind of foreign policy. So he's been great on that, and overall, I think Trump's been a pretty good president in my opinion. I think he's an a-hole, and I think he's just not a great person. And there's a lot of people on the right that just worship him, and I don't necessarily agree with those people. But the reason why I went down there, and there was a group of us from our area that went down there. There's about 170 of us, 3 bus loads full. There was only 1 seat empty, and that was the guy who coordinated it thought he deserved 2 seats. And I agree, he did, because it was a freaking pain in the butt for him. He worked his butt off to get it done. But we went down to D.C., to protest the steal, essentially. And my personal reason, the main reason why I was going down there, 2 reasons. First, I thought this was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A rally of this sort, I knew there was going to be thousands upon thousands of people, and I wanted to make sure I was there to support, our peers from our area, because I'm friends with a lot of these people, and, just make sure they needed help, needed a young body. And then number 2, politically, the reason why I wanted to go was mainly to protest the election, not because I thought it was going to be able to be overturned, but because I thought there was a lot of, I'm one of those who thinks there was a lot of fraud in the mail-in voting, and I just think it wasn't looked into enough, I guess would be a good way to put it. So I wanted to go down there and join my peers and I guess support the president in a way, because I don't think it would have probably ever been enough to persuade him, but I think there's been some fishy stuff that needed to be looked into more, that the government just kind of slid over and said, oh, well, we didn't do nothing wrong, so I don't know what you're talking about, So that was my main reasons of going. So we basically rode down there, 15-hour trip or whatever down there. We got there the morning of about 9 a.m. We met with actually our congressman, Jason Smith, for our area. He met us at the World War II memorial monument there at on the grounds around the Capitol, near the mall, or maybe even at the mall. I don't know if that's still considered that area yet. But he gave us a speech and thanked us for coming and vowed his support, and he was still going to object and stuff like that to the election. And it was a pretty cool moment. We met up with, there was a Missouri representative. I don't know if you guys seen that on Facebook, Justin Hill. He is one of your more radical representatives. He was there. He's been making a ton of headlines that have just been slandering him and just making up a bunch of lies about him. Actually, most of them apologized at this point. But he was there, so it was cool to see him there. He actually skipped the swearing in so he could come down and to this rally. And just forewarning, or foreground, he did not take place in any riots or storm the Capitol building. Well, I can vouch for him on that.
I'm disappointed in that. Then I thought you were going to say this is a really radical dude.
There was a delegate at, I think, West Virginia that did though, and recorded himself going in. I'm sure you've probably seen that. That was pretty crazy of him to do that. But after that, they had a rally around the Washington Monument. Trump held a speech at the White House. had several thousands of people there. We wanted to go to the rally at the Washington Monument because we knew there's no way we're getting in the White House. We had all of our crap and stuff with us, so we went to. There was just so many people. I mean, you can't even guess. I mean, you see like 20 and 30,000. There had to be more people than that. I've been to a rally in D.C. with confirmed 300,000 people. There was just as many people there at this rally than there was at the one that was confirmed at. So I'm personally guessing anywhere from 250 to 300,000 people that were at this thing, if not more. I mean, there could have been 500,000.
What was the energy like there with the people? I mean,
very patriotic.
I mean, was it like, did it feel pretty souped up? Like, was it, I mean, the energy level was high, I guess, and because I'm imagining like a good concert, like you go to Riverport or whatever it's called now. You know what I'm saying?
Did you really just call it Riverport?
I always call it Riverport. I can't.
Amphitheater?
Yeah, Hollywood Casino.
Hollywood Casino, okay. And before the show, you're in this group of people, and you're waiting to see the concert. You're waiting to see the show. I've never been to a political rally, so I'm kind of asking to frame it for me. Give me some insight into what that's like. But just imagining the energy there. You know, you have this anticipation that you're going to hear this good band, and everybody likes this band. It's kind of the same thing for a political rally. Is that what you're feeling there?
Well, what are you anticipating for? In this scenario,
well, speeches and things like that, I guess.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty safe bet. Actually, I mean, the people were they were just excited to be there. They're excited to show their support behind the president, and that's why most of them went. They obviously think they thought that this thing could have been overturned, and so they were there. I think the more extremists that did this were assuming it was going to be overturned, and they thought this thing was completely stolen. And but I would say the majority of the people that were there were just hyped up. Especially when the president got on the mic and was speaking, which was over like video from where we were at. It was being video fed and through speakers and stuff like that. And the people the whole time just chanting USA, USA, stop the steal, and just peaceful. Honestly, the people, by the way, there from everywhere that I was around were so nice. Everybody was super friendly, talking to everybody, and it was just a good vibe. Okay. It really was. And after the speech was, we kind of left early. We knew that there was going to be a march to the Capitol, so we kind of left early to get over there. A lot of our members who were actually like 70 plus that were with us were real cold. It was freezing. So to get the legs moving and warm, we decided to go ahead and start towards the Capitol. So we left before the speech was ever even over, and we took off towards the Capitol. And, at that point, I think what the people were more angry about was the fact that there was only like 2 bathrooms there. There was no porta potties to be found. And that was done on purpose, by the way. The D.C. mayor made sure to make things inconvenient for the crowd to try to persuade people from coming. And I jokingly say that's why people were so pissed off, because they all had to go to the bathroom. That's why they stormed the Capitol, because they needed to use the restroom. So, because I was one of those, and I'll get to that, here in a second. But as we walked up to the Capitol, we basically met no opposition whatsoever. At that point, all the barricades were already all gone. I seen like 2 that I seen people move, and that's about it. Just like 2, not 2 lined barricades, but just 2 parts of barricades moved. Once we got to that point, so we were maybe 100 yards from the Capitol, and I had to go to the bathroom so dang bad. So I seen some porta potties over there, which, by the way, like I said, there was 2. Long line already, and I was like, I can't hold anymore, so I'm going that way. So I went to go to the bathroom, and as we're sitting in the bathroom, everybody's in there, and we're just talking, and there's Congress is in there doing their thing. They're supposed to be objecting and then accounting, and then it started. A lot of people started getting like notifications saying that Pence was going to say no, like he wasn't going. If Congress didn't come up with the votes to overturn the election, then Pence was going to let it go. Which, by the way, is what he should have done. He had no constitutional authority to overturn this election. I keep trying to tell people that and explain people that. That's a misconception. I know the president says he had the power, but he didn't. He does not. President or Vice President Pence did not have the power to overturn this election.
That's not a thing.
Even if he did, why would we want that? We wouldn't want that, but it's not a thing. Exactly. So anyways, people started throwing out some pretty heinous comments, honestly, after that happened, calling him a traitor.
Yeah.
Saying that, he needs to go. Blah, blah, blah. I never heard death threats, by the way, because I know that's being thrown out there. I personally never heard that, but there was definitely people calling him traitor and was super upset with with the vice president and him just doing his constitutional duty. But, as we're sitting in line, you start hearing rumors. At this point, they had already breached the Capitol, but I had no clue. None of us had any clue that they had gotten into the Capitol building. As I said, we walked up. The group that I was in, who walked up without me, I ended up meeting them at the base of the Capitol, and they just walked right up like it was nothing. There was no barricades. There was no. I didn't see any police officers until what I believe was after the lady got shot. I think that's when the police officers started going. When they started shooting tear gas at people, from where I was at, we just thought it was like the cannons you would have at baseball games or football games, that celebratory cannons just shooting off fireworks or something like. We honestly thought it was the organizers shooting off fireworks and stuff like that to get the people, cheering and riled up, and because that's what it was again. They were there to protest the election. And next thing you know, by the way, all the smoke pictures you're seeing, there was not that much smoke there. A lot of that stuff's got to be doctored. But next thing you know, we started hearing from people that's tear gas that are shooting out at people and shooting out rubber bullets and kind of like rubber bullet bombs or grenades or whatever you call it. So all this is kind of being fed through, like either per the phone or through kind of like a telephone type of thing, running down the line. Mm-hmm. And we heard about the lady who got taken out on a stretcher. There was rumors of her being shot, rumors of her getting pushed off scaffolding because there was scaffolding up there for the inauguration. People took that over, which was actually, when we first got there was nobody on that scaffolding, but like you started seeing one person going up there and two people going up there, and next thing you know, people everywhere. But still, with all this going on, we didn't know about the stuff in the Capitol. There's USA chants, national anthem being sung, people singing the Proud to Be American song that kind of came out after 9/11. It's escaping me right now. Just patriotism is what I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. And still, never once did we feel at harm. You never felt like we were going to be in harm's way. The group, some of our group experienced some tear gas from the wind blowing over and getting kind of in their mouth and lungs, but it was never as bad as what the media is hyping it up to be. There's definitely some things that went down that I definitely do not condone. Obviously condemn that. We could have went to the Capitol building if we wanted to. We could have got up on the scaffolding. There was some of people in our group that did go up on the scaffolding to wave flags, and it was, I guess, empowering for them and stuff. But and to me, that was fine. They were never going into the building. There was thousands upon thousands of people on these scaffoldings. So, and it was actually pretty cool because when they got up on the bench side of the scaffolding, where I guess like Congress and stuff would be sitting during the inauguration, they rolled out this giant flag up there, and it was a pretty cool, like, patriotic moment. And that's when people started singing the national anthem, and that was just awesome. And then they brought out like a "We the People" flag and stuff like that. And during this whole thing, at this point, I still am thinking like this is a part of the show. I'm like, man, this is awesome because this is what the people are putting on. And come to find out, it was just people overtaking the Capitol. But the number one thing, though, is I really honestly believe that the media is just blowing this thing way out of proportion.
Don't you think the media always does, though?
Oh, yeah.
Like on both sides?
It makes me second guess about the Black Lives Matter riots. Right? It really does.
Yeah.
Because I know what I saw, and what I saw was peaceful. I seen prayer circles, like people praying for the president and the country. Those people aren't going to go in and take over the free. No, I didn't see anybody armed. There was no one armed. They had like their helmets and stuff, obviously you see, and flag poles that you see busting out the windows and stuff. But, a window, here's the difference between, we'll say the BLM riots and then these quote unquote riots here, is those riots were taking on private businesses, burning private property. At least these were just busting out windows that, we're going to pay for. You know what? You just take my money. I'm against taxes, but I will pay for one or two of those windows that they broke last Wednesday.
Just to show you how serious I am right now.
Exactly.
I thought that same thing, which I don't know. I don't disparage anything or anyone where I'm not there, and where I'm not a part of it, so I don't have any firsthand knowledge. But one of the first things I thought of was that this was a direct protest to the people who actually deserve it, if anybody deserves it, right? Instead of a mom and pop shop somewhere on Main Street, this is going to the people. And I thought the same thing with, I think it was I don't know, I can't, you've got to be careful in my opinion, or I've been told this in different circles, but you got to be careful about attaching BLM to just anything that happened out there with the riots, because there were these external people who just come in and like kind of join the crowd. But during all of those riots that were going on, and whatever was happening, there was, I think it was up here, maybe even, I don't want to say the exact city because I don't remember, but somewhere in the St. Louis area where they did go and they took over the police station. I thought the exact same thing. I thought, well, if you're mad at the police, go to the police station, take that over, break their windows, which I'm not condoning once again, but it just makes more sense to me that that's a natural reaction to go to the source of your anger and not just let it, just pour out all over your own community, especially but anybody's community, because these people they took no part in that. I thought the Wall Street thing, what was that? Occupy, yeah. I thought the Occupy was pretty pertinent as well, because they went to where all the money's going of everybody with their suits and ties that's screwing the little people. That's the source. That's where you want to go to stir some shit. Right? So I thought that about this Washington D.C. thing too. When it was still first coming out, it was all happening and the news was kind of pouring in. They're like, of course the media is dramatizing to the fullest extent, catastrophizing every little thing that's happening. But then you find out, a lady died, so on and so forth. Windows were getting broken, I guess. But I still thought, well, at least whatever's going on right now, at least they're going to the source. At least, go there. And display your anger there.
And that's why I don't feel bad. I know even a lot of people on the right talking about the guy at Nancy Pelosi's desk. And I don't feel bad for that particular part whatsoever.
That was hilarious.
I think it's hilarious.
Like, if you had the chance, would you have, in hindsight, gone in her office?
That's probably the first place I would have. There would have been two. Either I told myself if I would have actually went in, there's two places I probably would have went to. Our congressman to probably defend his door and make sure nobody was knocking down that, or Nancy Pelosi's desk. Because I just, there's nothing. I know there's many people that broke the law, and I know I probably would have actually never done it because I wouldn't have cojones to do that.
Right.
But there's just something about it that I just have to have the respect for the guy for doing it. And, I do believe it does make me think. You're talking about outsiders coming into the riots. I do believe there might have been a few there, but I would say, because a lot of people saying there's BLM people in there. I do think there was one confirmed BLM or Antifa guy up in the crowd. I believe I've seen that. Of course, this was a social media thing, so who knows?
Right.
But, a lot of the QAnon people, I don't know if you know much about them, but
I know a little.
Yeah, they're more of the crazies. The guy with the horns, he was a QAnon guy and stuff like that. So they're your more radical people. But I would say there could have been a lot more people inside that Capitol than there was. So at some point,
there was some
stopped.
restraint.
Yeah, at some point, some people stopped because they realized, hey, we're not stupid and we're not going to break federal law and go into a building and break windows.
It wasn't that kind of a party. It proved itself not to be that kind of a party. Like when this was all first hitting on your social media and then the news when I went to check it out, I thought it was in fact that kind of a party. I thought they're going to take it over, and that was kind of exciting and scary all at the same time. And I'll say I don't agree or disagree with anything. I didn't know anything about it, to be honest with you. I didn't even know there was a rally happening. So that's how out of touch I am with politics right now. So I didn't have any opinion, nor do I really have any opinion on what was going on. But just that excitement that, wow, this is could be this insurrection in the Capitol right now. That's just crazy.
Do you think security was somewhat told to stand down somewhat just because if they would have done what they could have done to keep these people out, it would have looked a lot worse in the media than it actually did.
There have been a lot of people dead. Yeah, for sure. Well, and to answer that, yes, and I want to kind of scooch back a little bit, and then I'll go a little forward with that. So you see the pictures of all of the people on the steps, and it makes it look like the people just dominated and took over this Capitol. As I was saying before, there was no restrictive barriers when we got up there. So I would bet a lot of money on 99% of those people that were on the Capitol steps and on those balconies. Probably, maybe not the balcony, maybe not the scaffolding. To me, that seemed a little bit obvious that shouldn't have been on. But, the people probably just assumed, because there's no barricades, that we could walk right up there. So, there was just all these people on the steps because there was no restraint. And I understand the first people that got over there probably pushed those restraints back, but you can't categorize everybody as taking over the Capitol because there's all these million or thousands of people's 20,000 people on the steps of the Capitol. That's just not the case. They just walked right up there because we thought we could, because there was no restraints there. And so that was kind of the case there. And to answer your question, Colt, they were definitely told to stand down. I've seen videos of when they're, when they get to the Capitol building and like the dome room or whatever, there's a line of officers, maybe like 10, 15 officers across, stopping the people from going forward. There's hundreds of people walking towards them. They could have just pushed right through those officers. What'd they do? They stopped. There was some bad ones yelling at the officers, calling them traitors, let us through, we don't want to hurt you, blah, 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 blah. But then you had others shouting those people down, basically like, dude, these are part of us. They're on our side. They're just doing their job. Back off. And then that big old crowd doesn't move forward until the officers move back. A superior officer came and told them, let the people through. And that's when they, started going. So the funny thing about this is I think one of the reasons there was hardly any Capitol Police from what I seen from the outside. I hardly seen any. I didn't see any until there was the lady shot. That's when I think they kind of brought in some backup. I seen 20 or 30 of them walk from they passed the bathroom line, funny enough, while I was in line at bathroom, to go to inside the Capitol through a side door. And the thing about it is I believe during of course, this was from a Ben Shapiro podcast that I learned this from. So, if you trust him or not, I believe it to be true. He said one of the main reasons why the Capitol force was much less is during the Black Lives Matter riots and other riots, Capitol Police apparently were a little bit too rough on the protesters. So they scaled back the amount of police that was there. And just in general at the Capitol, and so that's why there was less force there than what there should have been. And so, like I said, that was on one of Ben Shapiro's podcast. I'm probably paraphrasing that pretty poorly, but I like to, I would assume what he's saying is true. So,
well, one of the reasons, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, but one of the reasons why I'm so apathetic nowadays about politics and just about current events, which I am going to re-engage at some point in time, at least to a degree. I'm just going to slowly do it so I don't get sucked into the madness in a way that it diminishes my quality of life, because I think that's what happens to a lot of people. They just get sucked into the chaos and you become hyper one way or the other, left or right, super partisan, whatever, and it really sucks the life out of a lot of people. I just don't want that to happen. But at any rate, I've become apathetic because I've realized that the media portrays whatever it is the media wants to portray. So they can take this little snippet of something that happened and they can put context behind that.
Yep.
And portray that as something that is totally either opposite of what was happening or just something that's skewed, something that it's just crazy. So I come to the point where I don't know what to believe. Some people believe this guy over that guy, but I'm like, why? Why do you believe either one of them?
Yep.
How can you tell?
I
can't
the
tell.
Perfect example of that specific, and I didn't mean to cut in, but
No,
it's just
okay.
It's so good to what you're saying. So we'll take the guy who I'm not going to name him, but the guy who put this together had what he knows a lady that works at Fox 2. They reached out to him afterwards and did an interview over Zoom on the bus ride on the way back. And, he's talking about, what about the crowd and, what we seen. And similar to what I'm saying is it was 99.9% patriotic and, just not as bad as what you're probably going to see in the media. And he's saying that they didn't cut any of that out. But towards the end, he asked if any of our crew got tear gassed or any of that stuff. And he'd said, well, not really, but there was the wind kind of blew in our direction. And, a lot of some of our members, including myself, not me, but he was talking, including himself, did taste the tear gas and did get it in their face and nose, and it was burning a little bit. And they had asked him what it tasted like, or I can't remember the specific question, but basically his response was, well, it tastes like freedom. And you want to know what they put behind that? A guy laying on the ground that had just been maced with a flag around him. So making it look like, first of all, that it was a part of our group. And second of all, that's what freedom tastes like, is being, so the context of what he said made it sound a lot worse and a lot more radical than what it actually was. And, they posted a picture of him on the wall holding up a Missouri flag, which is actually a flag that, at one time at Jeff City, hung over the Capitol at Jeff City anyways, that we had with us, that he was able to get his hands on. And, with a bunch of people in the background on the scaffolding. And, it was a cool picture, but it just made it look like, we were doing things that we shouldn't have been doing, and that's just not the case of 99.9% of the people there.
It's amazing how they ask the questions that no matter what they know that no matter what your answer is, they can turn it whichever way they want to do it to make it, go with their agenda, whatever they're wanting to do.
Because of this interview, when we got, we had security at one of the stopping points there on pickup and drop off. Or at least at the St. Louis pickup drop-off point, and they had warned us that media was there. And because of that, we strategically told everybody, you can if you want. We're not going to stop anybody from doing it, but it's probably best that you just don't talk to the media because they're just going to splice anything that you say.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, it's just crazy. You hear about it and you know what happens, but when you see it firsthand, and I was sitting in the seat right in front of him, so I know exactly what he said. And they didn't splice any of that, but it's just, the way that they make it look and splice it, it's just wrong. It's not, of course, it brings in the ratings, and that's what they're there to do, ratings and sponsored, but it's just not right. And, and it portrays things to make it look a lot worse than what it actually was. And unless you were actually there and you've seen, 99.9%, I'm going to keep bringing that up because that's what I saw. I saw patriotism. Like I said, I was there for a guy that didn't even vote for in 2016. I voted for him this time, but I just have to make sure that I'm out here preaching to the people out here that just don't believe what you're seeing on TV, because this thing was not as bad as what you're seeing. Like you said at the very beginning, it was very mediocre. You walk away. There wasn't vandalism all in the Capitol. There were some things taken, windows broken, but there's not spray paint everywhere. Not everything was ransacked. Honestly, by 6 o'clock, almost everybody was gone. They laid out this is to tell you how bad these lawbreakers were. But they laid out a curfew of 6 o'clock for Washington D.C. that everybody got on their phone. 6 o'clock, almost everybody was gone. So yeah, we have to go in and storm the Capitol, break the law that way.
We have until 6 o'clock.
We have until 6
to
o'clock
do what we need to do.
That's exactly
get
right.
it done now.
That's exactly right.
That's hilarious.
No fires. There's people that tackled media and broke cameras, and I get it. I know they're frustrated. I mean, let's talk about why this happened in the first place. These people are, they're called deplorables, they're called white nationalists, they're called racists. By the way, tons of minority people there. I talked to so many black people, it's not even funny. Just tons of all Trump supporters, Trump hats, Trump shirts. One lady in a wheelchair with one leg, Trump geared black lady, Trump geared, tons of, Asians, a lot of Chinese people there that were there protesting the Chinese Communist Party and stuff like that, all there. And it was honestly awesome. And I did not go down there thinking it was going to be, and it was. But you got these people that have been called white nationalists, and just getting spit on by the media and by the Democrat Congress people, which Republicans do too on the other side. Fair game, like you said. But they're just getting spat on for the last 4 years, and most of it's not true. And they finally said, screw it. You got the BLM side being held up as martyrs and celebrated for burning down cities. So, I don't condone what they did, but honestly, I'd be lying if I said I didn't understand it, because I do. I understand why they did it.
You understand the frustration?
I understand the frustration.
Some of the motivation behind, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm not even necessarily on that team one way or another, or at least not to the fullest anyways.
I think your perspective on that, though, it also speaks to a lot of people who, on the other side, like with the leftist movements, they maybe have that same sentiment. They understand the frustration behind it, even if they're not taking part in it. And so I just wonder if this is this portrayal of the frustrated part of this society can be connected to the other side, if we can find some common ground, or if it's just going to be more divisive. You know what I'm saying? Does it show any of us that we're frustrated about different things, but we're all frustrated? Let's try to come to some kind of a common solution instead of continuing to battle each other out. Because I know we're always going to have difference in politics. I mean, just hearing you talk, I don't agree with necessarily everything that you lean toward politically. You know,
it's the tanks, huh?
It's not the tanks. No, I'm down with the tanks. I'm down with the airships. I'm down with the cannons.
I've just been sitting here thinking a cannon would look really good in my front yard.
Right? Yeah.
I'm saying, especially the new one. Yeah, the new front yard.
Yeah, one that works too. Like I want to fire off some rounds.
I put a gunship down in my creek too.
Absolutely. But I don't agree with all of your politics, but I can still sit here and we can have a good conversation about it. And I would like to see that spread. I would just like the conversation to spread. And right now you can't, because there's so much vitriol. There's so much determination in taking the other guy out. It's not about whether or not we disagree. It's I hate you. I hate you because of your politics.
I lost multiple friends for going down there.
Yeah.
Deleted as soon as my wife was on Facebook, obviously defending especially the people from our area, who by the way are getting death threats and being called by both parties, basically just everything in the book. And once these people found out that I went down there, they deleted me right away. And
how can, I'm sure you've thought about this, but could you going there and people knowing you went there affect anything in the future for you that you run for?
I mean, maybe, but that's fine. If it does, it is what it is. I've been an outspoken critic of the president, and I've been an outspoken supporter of the president. I call it as I see it. Like I said, I lean small government, no tax, less taxes, anyways. And in times that he's done things I disagree with, I'm very clear on Facebook to point it out. And I did that on the campaign trail when I was campaigning. But on things that he did that were good, like foreign policy and some tax cuts and stuff like that, I thanked him for that. So I'm one. I don't like to call myself moderate, because usually when people say moderate, they put you in the middle. Mm-hmm. But because I find myself, in my opinion, much further right than a lot of Republicans. But I mean, that's kind of where I'm at.
You're still objective, though. I think that's what you're getting at. In my opinion, you are Republican, you are right, but you're also still objective. Just because Trump is the Republican president doesn't mean that you agree with every single thing that he says or does. Yeah. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people. And that's what I mean by hyperpartisanship. They don't just support the person who's on their side of the aisle. They throw everything at that person. It's like they idolize that person, and when you feel like that person can do no wrong, you've lost your objectivity, and that's where you've lost me. Not that you necessarily that you care that you lost me, but you lost me.
And that's why I say this shouldn't even be a problem. The presidency should matter so little that it shouldn't matter who's there, and whether it's through executive order or just the power that the executive branch has got, has succumbed, mainly because Congress has given it to them. That's a problem. And you see that on state levels too. But, most of this wouldn't even be an issue if government was so small that it didn't matter, especially on the federal level. And you may see this on the state level, but, that's fine. You're not seeing this at the national level to where you have national security basically, with Pelosi's laptop being taken and, stuff like that, up at risk. So, like I said, one of the biggest issues of this in the first place is, government's just so big that, the right thinks that if the left is in power, that that the country's gone, mm-hmm. and then the left thinks when the right is in power that the country's gone. Mm-hmm. And really what it should matter is it doesn't matter who's in power. The people have their rights and their natural rights, and we shouldn't be getting those trampled on at any given time.
Don't let the government tell you otherwise, right?
Exactly. And
because they do, and they will.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I had something here, I just wanted to make sure I kind of said everything there, because the key is, what's going to be next at this point? I was one of the few that went down there, but, not believing what the president said in regards to, I knew Pence wasn't going to be able to overturn this thing. I knew the likelihood of, even with Congress having objectors, that it wasn't going to be overturned, because even with it being both the House and the Senate were going to have majority vote to object this thing, and then with the House having the majority Democrats, it just wasn't going to happen. So I knew going down there that this election wasn't going to be overturned. I knew it was done. Like I said before, I was going down there to protest that there was fraud, and I don't think it was well taken care of. And Ted Cruz, the reason he objected is he wanted to see like a committee be put together of actual senators, 5 and 5 on Democrats and Republicans, and really do an investigation, an emergency audit on this thing. So that was why I kind of went down there. And so I wonder what's next. Are we going to see more of this? Because if so, things are going to hit the fan pretty darn quick.
Listen, there are people who still, according to their social media posts, staunchly believe that Trump's not done yet, that he is going to take office once again in 2021. And they have written these big, long diatribes of certain bullet points, and they believe this is why this is going to happen, and this is what's wrong with the government. And I mean, according to their posts, they really believe that. That's one thing, and this is one of the problems with social media, is that it is like wildfire for a lot of people, because they're reading this. And I saw another post where this guy looks like Farmer Joe down the road, right? He looks like this guy who you see on the John Deere. He'll wave at you as he's spitting his chewing tobacco, and he's one of those guys. But he gets on Facebook.
From our area.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like
literally, he's down the road.
Right. If you look out the window, you'll see him right now. But he gets on, and one of my Facebook friends sends me this post that says, well, he just says, watch this. You got to watch this immediately. Okay, well, I turn it on. There's Farmer Joe, and he tells me about how he's got these contacts with all this inside information, intel as he calls it, and this is what's going to happen. This is why Trump's going to. It just goes on, I think, for 25 minutes. It's like someone took this serious enough to send it to me.
Yep.
Are you kidding me? Like, this is literally some guy out there who's, just cutting his grass and thinking of ways, I guess, to be on social media and try to seem important, try to seem relevant.
Well,
that kind of stuff happens all the time.
Yeah, but speaking of social media, isn't it the first thing that comes to my mind that Trump has been banned from like Twitter and Facebook and stuff is why it's odd to me that it's newsworthy that somebody's banned from. I understand it's the president, but still that he's banned from a social media site. That's crazy to me. Like, I understand how big social media is now, but just the fact that it hasn't been around really that long for me to think that it should be newsworthy that somebody got banned from it.
Well, it's because they've amassed so much power over what's spread and newsworthy wise or news wise. And what's funny is I know that they're doing, or at least I think the reason these big tech companies are doing it is to try to silence the president because they think it's going to make matters better. I would argue that it's going to make things worse. So the people see this, and it's just adding fuel to the fire of these people that think the president keep getting crapped on. And it doesn't matter whether he is or not. The point is what is happening is these people who are already pissed off. Clearly, they've been in lockdown for a year. They're tired of big government, and they think the government's just going to get bigger. So they're and like I said before, they're called names all year long and stuff like that. So they just keep getting this anger built up. You got your bottle with your bottle cap on it with some Mentos in there, and it's just sizzling and it's sizzling. It's getting ready to explode because the people think something happened, and this isn't helping. They already are against big tech. Even though we're essentially forced to use them, they are. I'm hoping that we see a shift in hopefully other big tech, hopefully other users come in and stuff like that. But we'll see. But what I was getting at is I think the people are going to see this, and they already think Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and all these guys at Google are the bad guys. So when they do this, they're making themselves look even worse to this crowd, and maybe they don't care. However, I just think they're making matters worse.
I think they pretty much under the impression, and maybe it's true, that they've already got our society on lock with like using social media, Facebook, Twitter, things like that. Because just a real quick vote here between us, does Twitter have the right, in your opinion, to ban Trump?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm down the middle.
Well,
okay.
Let me explain why.
Uh-huh.
Because it's a private company.
Correct.
So if they, in any form or fashion, take government dollars, not for like advertising or anything, because governments do that. They pay Facebook and Twitter for advertising. What I mean is if they are taking subsidies to help pay for things that because they can't make ends meet or whatever, then I would completely disagree with that. But the fact that, to my knowledge, Twitter and Facebook are completely reliant on their own revenue, and you know they are completely private companies. I mean, they're public companies because they're publicly traded.
Right.
But what I mean, that doesn't just because they're privately owned
basically.
companies. A lot of people misunderstand that, by the way. But they should be allowed to censor whomever they want, but be consistent with it. Is my biggest issue. You know, you're gonna ban the president, but you have dictators who are killing people out in the streets every day. Still on Twitter, or the Chinese Communist Party on Twitter. Okay, I mean, come on now.
The fact they make a little bit of revenue themselves, Facebook and Twitter, they make a little bit of money.
A little bit.
And so they really don't need government subsidies or anything like that. So, and that's my viewpoint as well, because they are quote unquote privately owned. They're not a public, as in governmental type of entity. Then they pretty much have the right, if they're not discriminating based on, because what they have are what their rules, basically, their regulations for their user agreement, whatever it is. If you break those standards, then they can ban you, and you sign off on that when you join the platform anyway. So they feel like Trump is he's stepping over those agreements, and so therefore they have the right to ban him, just like they did to Alex Jones. Rest in peace. I know you're out there somewhere still.
What the heck?
Putting out. I was always a big fan. Didn't believe a good portion of what he said. I just loved listening to him. He's hilarious. I still like catching him every once in a while.
He's got the best Rogan podcast there is. I know I've texted you on a few times, but his episodes are the best.
I've seen it. I've seen them, all of them. But yeah, so that's where I land. Now, in my opinion, which once again, I don't care. I could care less either way. If there's no Facebook tomorrow, I'm not going to shed a single tear, right? Or Twitter. I just don't really care. I use them. I have some fun with them. I love memes. We talk about that, but I don't really care either way. But if the people really want to speak, since this is a private quote unquote company, then you got to use the market, and so enough of those people have to not use that app, that company. So therefore, their market share is going to go way down because their ad revenue is going to sink, and they're going to lose a bunch of money. Then they're going to be in a real pickle, right? They're going to be in a real pickle. Not that they'll go all the way the other way, because if they went all the way to the right side of the aisle, then your left segment of the population, who are also the same consumers, part of the same consumers, they're going to back away if they use the market to their advantage. And so, and people don't understand, but this is a lot of this is how you can use the markets in order to influence the public opinion or the public the policy of things. If you don't like Trump being banned, then don't use Twitter or don't use Facebook. And if enough people do that, then obviously things are going to change. But what happens? We get on Facebook and we complain about it. Not we, because once again, I could care less. I don't really care.
But a lot of people do.
Yeah. They do. That's where I see it, right? I'm seeing people complaining about Facebook on Facebook, saying, I hate Facebook. And I'm sitting there thinking, why are you here?
How many people have you seen that have supposed to deleted their Facebook 18,000 times already?
Yeah.
Well, that was my joke before, like with when at first when everybody started moving to Parler, all your conservatives and stuff like that started moving to Parler, and I had said I didn't post about it, but I was telling people personally, I was like, look, people are gonna be back. Parler sucks. I'm sorry, it's just got to be better before people come back. And guess what? They did. And until something gets better, or you're just not going to have it. Now, of course, you're seeing team ups right now with like Apple and Google. Basically, you're saying, hey, we're not going to let Parler on our mobile devices if they don't start silencing people, and that's unfortunate. But this is where the market starts to turn. This is why you let the market do your thing. Unfortunately, people have the tendency of wanting things right now, so they're like, oh man, Facebook's doing this, so I want my way now. Well, unfortunately, that's not how it works. With monopolies and markets, usually big companies either they're putting out a product that is so dang good, they may start to monopolize. But the product is so good that it doesn't necessarily matter. But so monopolies in some senses may not be bad. But then when they start becoming producing poor product, poor services, that's when you start seeing other smaller companies arise and bringing up newer products. And so that's when you start to see a shift in the market. And I would expect this to be one of the turning points with maybe Facebook, maybe. At least I would start to see that anyways. So we'll see where it goes. I'm honestly, Facebook is obviously a superior product. I have not really had a problem with it, so we'll remain here, and we'll have a parlor and other stuff that I'll go to as well. Whatever. I don't mind. I already have 9 different social medias on my phone, anyways. What's one more, right?
Yeah, I tried the Minds. Have you ever tried Minds?
I haven't.
Minesweeper?
No, it's Minds. just Minds.
I grew up with that.
I did too, dude. I used to love that. I got to where it wasn't just about like not hitting the mines. I want to see how quickly I could go through it, just like randomly
and hope you win.
Yeah, without blowing up. It very rarely ever happened. But no, it was just a little social media app that I tried out. It just wasn't, and I found it on Joe Rogan podcast. Is where I heard of it from, and it didn't last. Someone's going to have to come with the big guns to take down Facebook.
Are we gonna have
Elon Musk?
Are we gonna see
Maybe.
Biden on social media?
On Twitter, I bet you might see.
Or will he run his own account? I should say that. I guess.
No, he don't do nothing on his own right now, buddy.
Yeah.
That guy. I would be shocked if he lasts 2 years. I really do.
Yeah, you might see Kamala.
We will have the first woman president, in my opinion. I honestly believe that, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, I think you're really going to start to see states step up, and like I was talking about with nullification of Second Amendment rights and stuff like that. I think you're going to start seeing more of that at the state level, at least your more conservative states, and which would have been perfect for someone like me who was planning on going in and doing that anyways. But there's no doubt that both parties, in my opinion, are the parties of big government. And obviously the Democrats bigger than the Republicans, but neither party is perfect, and far from it, actually. So, I think you're going to see more of your states start to see that. I have some friends that think civil war or secession is going to start happening, and I doubt it. I doubt that happens. Things will probably continue to pan out. Things will get worse. They'll probably get rid of they'll get Obamacare back to where it was, or they'll get it, healthcare further on. And I like to see what states do. And that's where it should start in the first place, is at the state level. That's the whole point of the 10th Amendment, and really the whole point of a federalist government in the first place is state sovereignty and states stepping up, and when the government becomes overbearing, to step up and be that voice, not the people storming the Capitol. So hopefully we see that happening. Maybe Missouri could start it. I don't know. I doubt it because I'm not there. But it's no. There are some pretty good representatives that could be a leader on that. And I'm not saying that's what I want to see happen, but it might be necessary.
Well, I am with you on states doing what they were meant to do in the first place. It was supposed to be a federalist nation, right? I mean, the states are supposed to have sovereignty and autonomy, and when they have that, then they can make a lot of the decisions that they've relegated to the federal government. It's another conversation for another time, but it seems like it's always you got to follow the money, and the federal government has become so big, it's such a big business that they funnel money down to the states. It's kind of like I don't know if it's a bribe, but kind of like protection money going the opposite way. We'll protect you, but only if you take this money. We're only going to give it to you if you allow us to have oversight over you, basically, right?
That's exactly what happens.
You sure you want this? Because if so, then you're going to have to do A, B, and C. If you don't
do this, you ain't getting those COVID vaccines.
And then your population or your citizens are like, hey, why don't we have new roads, or why don't we have the COVID vaccine or whatever? And the people who rely on their constituents for the votes are like, well, we didn't take the money from the federal government. They're going to get voted out, right? Because the people, and so it's this massive cycle that's really broken. I wonder how the states are ever going to try and regain that power.
That's a problem. So we'll take Medicaid expansion that just happened in whatever it happened. I guess it was in the primaries of 2020 in Missouri. So originally when Obamacare came out, you had the option, the states had the option to have Medicaid expansion. They didn't have to take it, but the Medicaid expansion came with government funding, federal funding to the states. Well, Missouri said no. And, as the campaign for Medicaid expansion was going on, they were saying, well, it was going to bring in all of this extra revenue, but they weren't saying where the revenue was coming from. Well, it's coming from the federal government. That's where the extra revenue is coming from. All the rest of the revenue is coming from the state government. So, that's why it was a big deal that it was, which it passed, but the the budget. The Republicans were basically trying to get it to not pass because they knew that this was going to be a budget buster. That look, the funding is coming from the government. It's not coming from people that are paying the hospitals more. It's not coming from anything except for government tax dollars. Mm-hmm. And so it's just funny you said that because that's exactly what happened here. And it passed. And when people hear more money and free money, they just have a tendency to buy it and pay. Mm-hmm. They don't think about the future consequences of what could happen. And I would argue a lot of politicians do the same thing. Most politicians do. They don't think about the actual consequences that come, like a secondhand consequence that could happen. So
yeah, they're thinking about those votes.
That's exactly. Oh man, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started,
man, brother. The paradox of free money. That's another big conversation. But Bryant, we're running up on time here, man. We thank you for coming out and sharing your story with the run on the Capitol. And your insight into that is interesting. I assume you're going to be running again for Missouri politics maybe in a couple years here. Is that correct?
Originally I told the wife that it was going to be a one-and-done thing. I will say I thought after this my itch would be done. And it was you talk about checking out after my election, I was done.
Yeah.
But once the general election was over, I started getting back into it again. And the fire is there again. And so, I don't know. We'll see where it goes. I mean, it just depends. Once you talk about the money, obviously to be a viable candidate, you have to have money. So if there's some people that ask me to run and have, want to throw out some money my way for whatever it is, I'm willing because we need more candidates to bring on smaller government. And I was thankful that I lost in one sense because more family time. It actually brought my wife and I together, or closer together. It's so crazy. Just afterwards we just seemed to be a better relationship than what we had before I ran for election. And even during the election, it just brought us closer. So even with the addition of the third child, things just got way better. So I don't know for better or for worse if the loss was for better or for worse. However, if the timing is right, we obviously would have to talk to the main boss, the wife about that. But if timing is right and support is there, I could run for anything as long as it means protecting people's natural rights and bringing on liberty back to where it should be.
Good. Well, you're awfully young to not have maybe another run in you or two. So we'll be looking for that, man. Thanks again for coming out to the podcast studio.
Thank you, guys.
And it's good to see you as always, brother.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me again. And, hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.